Chapter 5. Notes. It was well past midnight by the time Cote made it back to Noir with Chronicler's limp body slung across his lacerated shoulders. The town's houses and shops were dark and silent, but the Waystone Inn was full of light. Boss stood in the doorway, practically dancing with irritation. When he spotted the approaching figure, he rushed down the street, waving a piece of paper angrily. "A note? You sneak out and leave me a note?" he hissed angrily. "What am I, some dockside whore?" Cote turned around and shrugged Chronicler's limp body into Boss' arms. "I knew you would just argue with me, Boss." Boss held Chronicler easily in front of him. "It wasn't even a good note. If you are reading this, I am probably dead." "What sort of note is that?" "You weren't supposed to find it till morning," Cote said tiredly as they began to walk down the street to the inn. Boss looked down at the man he was carrying, as if noticing him for the first time. "Who is this?" He shook him a little, eyeing him curiously before slinging him easily over one shoulder like a burlap sack. "Some unlucky sod who happened to be on the road at the wrong time," Cote said dismissively. "Don't shake him too much. His head might be on a little loose." "What the hell did you sneak off for, anyway?" Boss demanded as they entered the inn. "If you're going to leave a note, it should at least tell me what—" Boss' eyes widened as he saw Cote in the light of the inn, pale and streaked with blood and dirt. "You can go ahead and worry if you want," Cote said dryly. "It's every bit as bad as it looks." "You went out hunting for them, didn't you?" Boss hissed. Then his eyes widened. "No, you kept a piece of the one Carter killed. I can't believe you. You lied to me. To me!" Cote sighed as he trudged up the stairs. "Are you upset by the lie, or the fact that you didn't catch me at it?" he asked as he began to climb. Boss sputtered. "I'm upset that you thought you couldn't trust me." They let their conversation lapse as they opened one of the many empty rooms on the second floor, undressed Chronicler, and tucked him snugly into bed. Cote left the man's satchel and travel sack on the floor nearby. Closing the door to the room behind him, Cote said, "I trust you, Boss, but I wanted you safe. I knew I could handle it." "I could have helped, Reshi." Boss' tone was injured. "You know I would have." "You can still help, Boss," Cote said as he made his way into the room and sat heavily on the edge of his narrow bed. "I need some stitching done." He began to unbutton his shirt. "I could do it myself, but the tops of my shoulders and my back are hard to reach." "Nonsense, Reshi. I'll do it." Cote made a gesture to the door. "My supplies are down in the basement." Boss sniffed disdainfully. "I will use my own needles, thank you very much. Good, honest bone. None of your nasty, jagged iron things stabbing you like little slivers of hate." He shivered. "Stream and stone, it's frightening how primitive you people are." Boss bustled out of the room, leaving the door open behind him. Cote slowly removed his shirt, grimacing and sucking his breath through his teeth as the dried blood stuck and tugged against the wounds. His face went stoic again when Boss came back into the room with a basin of water and began to clean him off. As the dried blood was washed away, a wild scoring of long, straight cuts became clear. They gaped redly against the innkeeper's fair skin, as if he had been slashed with a barber's razor or a piece of broken glass. There were perhaps a dozen cuts in all, most of them on the tops of his shoulders, a few across his back and along his arms. One started on the top of his head and ran down to his scalp to behind his ear. "I thought you weren't supposed to bleed, Reshi," Boss said. "Bloodless and all that." "Don't believe everything you hear in the stories, Boss. They lie to you." "Well, you aren't nearly as bad off as I thought," Boss said, wiping his hands clean. "Though, by all rights, you should have lost a piece of your ear. Were they wounded like the one that attacked Carter?" "Not that I could see," Cote said. "How many were there?" "5. "5?" Boss said, aghast. "How many did the other fellow kill?" "He distracted one of them for a while," Cote said generously. On, Reshi," Boss said, shaking his head as he threaded a bone needle with something thinner and finer than gut. "You should be dead. You should be dead twice." Cote shrugged. "It's not the first time I should be dead, Boss. I'm a fair hand at avoiding it." Boss bent to his work. "This will sting a bit," he said, his hands strangely gentle. "Honestly, Reshi, I can't see how you've managed to stay alive this long." Cote shrugged again and closed his eyes. "Neither do I, Boss. Neither do I," he said. His voice was tired and gray. He spells gray the British way. Hours later, the door to Kotei's room cracked open and Boss peered inside. Hearing nothing but slow, measured breathing, the young man walked softly to stand beside the bed and bent over the sleeping man. Boss eyed the color of his cheeks, smelled his breath, and lightly touched his forehead, his wrist, and the hollow of his throat above his heart. Then Boss drew a chair alongside the bed and sat, watching his master, listening to him breathe. After a moment he reached out and brushed the unruly red hair back from his face, like a mother would with a sleeping child. Then he began to sing softly, the tune lilting and strange, almost a lullaby. How odd to watch a mortal kindle, then to dwindle day by day, knowing their bright souls are tinder, and the wind will have its way. Would I could my own fire lend, what does your flickering portend? Boss' voice faded until at last he sat motionless, watching the rise and fall of his master's silent breathing through the long hours of the morning's early dark.